Geder Shabbos, the next to the last Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, in the 6th chapter of Kinyan Torah, tells us that God acquired 5 things in the world. What are the 5 things in the world that he acquired? He acquired heaven and earth, and the Torah. First Torah, then heaven and the earth, then Avram Avinu, Abraham, and then Israel, and then the Beis Hamikdash, the Holy Temple. And the Mishnah, or rather the Brisa, the section that talks about it, brings proof that every one of these things has been bought or acquired by God. Now, why does God have to acquire these things? He made them. They're His already. So in the intervening time that we have been on this planet, despite the fact that God has created everything, we think that the world is ours. So the Mishnah is disabusing us of that concept, that despite the fact that God has given man freedom of choice to do whatever he or she wants to do in this world, there are things that are untouchable because they belong to God. Heaven and earth, you think you own the stars? You don't even own the earth that you tread on, that you build buildings on. That earth is God's. God can shake everything up, produce lava that will destroy the entire populated world, create breaches in the tectonic plates, separate places from each other, put oceans around places that had been connected, and so on and so forth. What we think is solid isn't solid, it just collapses. The Torah belongs to God. It's not ours to implement. We don't change God's laws. We implement God's laws. And even where the rabbis have added things, those things were added to make sure that we keep the Torah, and as such has the power of the authority of God. So the Torah had to be acquired, even though God made the Torah, gave us the Torah, because even that which was enacted by the rabbis belongs to God. And God acquired it as if God Himself instituted those things. Abraham belongs to God because God saved his life. When God saves your life and intervenes on your behalf with a miracle, that makes him yours. And therefore, every aspect of Abraham's life is a godly life. And then there's Israel, and then there's the Holy Temple. Why do we need to know this, that Israel has been bought? But we are His chosen people. Why do we need to know that God has bought us, that God owns us, and that God owns the temple? Isn't it enough that it's been designated as holy? The answer is, when God bought the Jews, the Israelites, and when God bought the temple, He bought all of it. He didn't just buy the choicest places. There's a place in the temple called the Beis Hamikdash. The Beis Hamikdash, they skinned the animals, and they took out the innards, and they had to clean out its manure, its feces. Understandably, this was not exactly the choicest of the services in the temple. And one could say it's not the choicest place in the temple, a place where you're constantly washing out excrement, garbage, place that should stink. In fact, the Rambam in Mor Nevuchim says the reason for the incense is to counteract the stink of the Beis HaMikdash. Just as the Beis HaMikdash is part of the temple complex, and God bought all of it and owns all of it, and that part of the temple has to be consecrated and held in high esteem. A person who's tamei cannot enter there. A person who's not a Kohen is not allowed to do any service there, even though it's a butcher shop's place which stinks. It is still the holy temple. It retains the holiness of the holy temple. It belongs to God. Same way, there are people who, we look at them, they don't look so holy. In fact, you look at their conduct, it's less than stellar. It's not what you would want as an example for your children. In fact, you may not want them to come home with you as a guest in your home because you're afraid that children might emulate them or the children might be frightened by them. Says the Torah, says the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, just as the Beis HaMikdash is holy, belongs to God, that Jew is holy and belongs to God, and you have to treat him accordingly as someone that's owned by God.